Good afternoon, everyone. This is Christine at Health Current, and thank you again for joining us for the Controlled Substance Prescription Monitoring Program webinar. This presentation is provided through a shared commitment between Health Current, the Arizona Healthcare Cost Containment System, ACCESS, the Arizona Board of Pharmacy, and the Arizona Department of Health Services, ADHS, to manage and coordinate the statewide EPCS Click for Control education campaign. Just a few logistical reminders during today's webinar. Please use the chat box for questions or comments. We ask that you include your name, practice, and organization, and please do not include any confidential information such as patient health information or PHI. Again, all lines will be muted. And today I would like to introduce Lynn Curtis, the Arizona Board of Pharmacy's Prescription Monitoring Program Marketing Specialist, will be our presenter for today's webinar. Lynn, are you with us today?
I am.
Wonderful. Let me turn things right over to you.
Okay. Christine, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with everybody this afternoon. I know this time is probably lunchtime, so I'm going to make it as worth it to you as possible. We will be here for the next probably 50 to 55 minutes. I will preface what I'm going to say today by I am experiencing a little bit of a head cold, so if I have to very quickly mute, it's just me grabbing a little bit of water, but hang in there. Today we're going to be talking about the PMP, but a couple of other things as well. We want to talk about what the PMP is, some of the reports that are around the PMP. We're also going to talk about some of the statutes that came about after the Arizona Opioid Epidemic Act came into practice, and talk about some of those. We'll talk just a little bit about EPCS. We will also talk about some additional resources and tools that are available to you as medical professionals when it comes to not just the PMP, but other tools and resources that are available when you are dealing with opioids and prescribing and dispensing and that type of situation. So let's go ahead and get started. Just kind of step back and talk about what the PMP is. It's a database that keeps track of all of the controlled substances that are dispensed in the state of Arizona. So the key word there is dispensed. So it does not have any controlled substances that are administered in a hospital. Those do not show up in the CSPMP, or as I call it, the PMP. And the reason why I work for the Board of Pharmacy is that most of the information with the dispensed controlled substances are uploaded to the database via the pharmacies. So that's why I work for the Board of Pharmacy. Just a couple of little quick fun facts about the PMP. We've been around since 2008. Right now, the database contains about 110 million records. So there is a lot of information that is available. We are connected to 37 other PMPs, and let me kind of explain that a little bit. Every state has some form of a PMP. The one that's a little bit different is Missouri. They don't have a state PMP. They have, the St. Louis County has the PMP that they use there. We are connected only to 37 of them, and the reason being is because of the statutes that we have to follow. There is certain information that we can share and certain information we cannot share. So usually after a lawmaking session, when things might change regarding the PMP, we will revisit some of those states that we're not connected to and see if we can make that connection. We are connected to every one of our border states except California. And usually when I'm out delivering this message in person, that's when I get the biggest groan, is because that's of course a big group of patients that we're not able to see through the Arizona PMP. Last year in 2019, the PMP, believe it or not, was information was requested from the PMP was queried 9.8 million times. So it's used quite a bit. It's used by doctors and medical professionals that are not just in the state of Arizona. So it is used quite a bit. The main report that comes out of the PMP is the patient utilization report. And this is as a sample of that report. It looks a little bit different now, but this will give you a general idea of what's what with it. When you pull a patient utilization report, it will give you a 1-year history from the date that you pulled it. The first section of the patient report is the patient information or linked records. We use our vendor uses, of course, their computers to try to match records to make sure that they have the most accurate records possible. There might be an instance where there was a Becky who received a controlled substance prescription and a Rebecca, same date of birth, say, of course, same gender, maybe a different address or a different name, and that's why you might have multiple records in this linked records section. Sometimes this is not completely accurate, and I'll share a little information here in a little bit about whom you can contact to get those fixed, but for the most part, it's fairly accurate. The second section in the patient utilization report is the summary section, and this gives you, just like it says, just kind of a summary of what you're going to find on the patient utilization report. The opioids and the buprenorphine sections will give you the last 30 days if there are any active prescriptions during that 30-day period. So again, this database is for medical professionals to give them one more piece of information that they can use to make the best decision possible for their patients. And so we try to do that with, again, with as much information on the patient utilization report that we can. The main part of the patient utilization report is the prescription section, and you can kind of see the information that is on there, the date it was filled, the date it was written. The ID column goes back to the patient records in that first segment. That's what that will reference back to. You can see the quantity of the days. This has the refills. If there were 5 refills that were given in the initial prescription and 3 of them were filled, you would see that there was 3 out of 5 that had been filled in the refilled section itself. Importantly, the prescription number, the prescriber, and the pharmacy. Now, in this particular segment, the prescriber and pharmacy are kind of in a little bit of a code, but that code is easily cracked in the final 2 sections where you have the prescriber and the dispenser information. And again, this would be all filled in, and this will give you information if you have to call a prescriber dispenser, if you had a question when you were taking care of a patient. This would give you that information to be able to reach out to the other person to help them make the best decision for the patient. Now, I talked about there are some times when the information is incorrect in the PMP, either by too many records being joined or not enough records being joined. What you can do is you can contact our admin team. They're very responsive. What we ask you do is if you did pull a patient utilization report and it was incorrect, just make sure you keep that handy so you can share that information with us. We try to match records or break records in order to make it as accurate as possible. And you will all be receiving a copy of this presentation after we're done, so you don't have to worry and scribble the numbers or anything like that. So again, in early 2018, Governor Ducey signed into effect the Arizona Opioid Epidemic Act, and there were some laws that were around the use of the PMP that were changed, and I want to kind of go through those really quick. Registration. If you are a prescriber and you've got a valid license from a state licensing board, if you have a valid DEA number, then you must be registered with the PMP. It's free. It never expires. The only thing that you'll have to do, and this is by statute, is you have to change your password every 90 days. So we ask that you keep that up. The web page at the bottom of the screen there is actually the web portal that you would go. That is the vendor portal that we use to access the PMP. You go in, it's very easy to register. Really you just have to make sure that you have your DEA numbers available, your MPI number, your professional license number. Then you will receive an email once you have completed the registration. All you have to do is just validate your email address, and then you'll be good to go. So we get calls from people who say, I don't prescribe controlled substances. You still have to be registered. We get calls from prescribers who have said, I'm retiring, but I want to keep my license and my DEA number, but I really don't know, if I'm going to use it very often. You must be registered with the PMP. Okay. Now, one of the things we hear about people who, once they're registered, but one of the big roadblocks to people who are not using the PMP is that it's a little clunky. You've got to go into a different system. You got to log in. You got to know your password. You've got to put the information in and that type of stuff. So there's a couple of strategies that you can use to make the PMP a little bit more favorable for your workflow. One of these is called having delegates. By law in the state of Arizona, only one person can have access to one account in the PMP. So what I mean by that is if you are a dentist, but you want your office manager to pull your PMP reports for you, if that person goes in and uses your account, that is against the law. Now, we have made it available where delegates can get their own account, and we can link that delegate account to multiple doctors or pharmacists that are in the practice, and then they can pull the patient utilization reports for the medical professional. So save some time. And again, the only thing with this to remember is that if you do set up a delegate and that delegate is pulling reports for multiple medical providers, before they pull the report, we just ask them to make sure they select the correct medical provider that they are pulling it for, so that medical provider gets credit for pulling the report. So that is one way of mitigating the interruption that might be posed by using the PMP. The other way, and the more fancy way, is called integration. And this is just what it says. If you're using a electronic health record system or pharmacy software, you can actually integrate the PMP into your system. What's great about that is you are maybe on your tablet, you're looking at your patient and you want to check the PMP report. You click a button. You might have to fill out a little bit more information about maybe if you want to search for different states, or maybe you want to make that search maybe longer than the 1 year that is the default. You click on that and you've pulled your report. So again, it's very easy. The Board of Pharmacy, they know the importance of this. So we pay for the licensing. You might have to pay a little bit to have the integration software connected to your software, but it's not that much. One thing to remember is that integration is not mandatory. You don't have to be integrated to still use the PMP. The AWARE system or that web portal would still be available. If you do have any questions about integration, we've got a great website, and I've got the web page down below. There is a little bit of a process where you fill out some forms and we contact you, and once that happens, then we pass you off to our vendor and they work with your IT department or to get things set up, but it's all on this web page. So again, integration, anybody who's been integrated loves it. It just makes everything so much more easy, quick, and fast when you're using the PMP. Okay, yes, I did get a little bit of water there. So we know that everybody needs to be registered, the pharmacists, the prescribers, the pharmacists, the delegates, but there are also by statute, other folks that have access to the PMP as well. And I want to kind of make you aware of these. The licensing boards have access to the PMP. Medical examiners have access as well. The folks on the left of this page, the prescribers through the medical examiners, they all have direct access to the PMP, meaning they can go in, they put in a patient's first name, last name, and date of birth, and then they're able to pull the report. Folks on the right, it's not quite that simple. We'll say it's indirect. Law enforcement or criminal justice agencies like the DEA, they have access. What they would do is they would go in, they would request a report, but in the comment section, they have to let us know what case number it is, because they can only pull information from the PMP if it involves an open case. Same thing with Medicaid fraud investigators. We do get quite a few requests from attorneys that want to have access for their clients through the PMP, and we only take court orders when that happens. As an individual patient, anybody who lives in the state of Arizona who has any records in the Arizona PMP can request those. There's a form that you fill out, you print it, you have it notarized, you sign it, you have it notarized, and you send that back to us with a valid copy of a government issued ID, and then we would send those back to you. And that's email, it's snail mail, it is fax, any of those, that's all on our web page. So there's a lot of different folks that have access to the PMP, and that makes my job a little bit exciting in the sense of I get to talk to a lot of different people about the PMP. So let's talk about when it is required by statute to pull a report. Well, if you're a prescriber, if you feel that you need to, are possibly going to be prescribing an opioid or a benzo, then you're required to pull the report. This is the minimum requirement. You have to include the preceding 12 months, which is the default length, so that's not that big of a deal. You must do it before the initial course of treatment, or if there is a treatment that is ongoing, it's chronic, then you have to pull it every 3 months during that ongoing treatment. There are some exemptions, and you can take a look at this really quick, and these are fairly self-explanatory. It means that you are not required. You can pull a report if need be, but in these situations, it is not required to do so. Now I want to talk about what is the requirement for pharmacists. And the reason why I bring this up is because, not that, I mean, there might be pharmacists online, they should know this, but their net's a little bit different. A pharmacist is required to pull a patient report before dispensing any Schedule II controlled substance. So a little bit different of a net. And we talk about pharmacists and their corresponding responsibility to help the patient. So if a pharmacist pulls a report and it's maybe a little bit, with a different requirement to pull the report, and they call the prescriber and they say, I pulled this and you might want to know this. That's just a corresponding responsibility. That's just two teammates working together to make sure they make the best decision possible, especially when prescribing and dispensing controlled substances. So even though we have access to the PMP, it's not carte blanche. You can't just go in and nilly-willy start pulling people's reports. And it really comes down to really two very basic rules. And anything outside of this is considered, it's against the law to pull. If you have a medical professional patient relationship, then it is appropriate for you to pull that patient's report. And as I mentioned before, if it's part of an ongoing investigation with either the licensing boards or law enforcement, then they are able to pull in that situation. Anything beyond that, it is inappropriate to pull a report. We do get information from folks who, just want to maybe pull for a movie star, or pull for, maybe somebody's daughter is dating a young man, and they want to maybe know a little bit about that. That is not an appropriate use of the tool. It is if you are looking up anybody outside of these parameters, it is a Class 6 felony. I work for the Board of Pharmacy, so we wouldn't have any jurisdiction when it comes to if it was a medical prescriber that was doing it, but that's why the licensing boards have access to it. And it's a database. Anything you do, anything you look up, anything you don't look up, we know about it. So even though the law says these are the bare minimums that you have to use the PMP, we have seen in the last year or so sort of a changing of an attitude about the PMP, especially with integration and making it just easier to use. A lot of the major health entities in the state and a lot of the associations are starting to push the use of the PMP as a best practice or standard of care. Again, not in every situation, but most such situations, it should be, pulled if there, feels that there is a need to pull it. We have seen that the PMP has helped to identify and deter and prevent abuse and diversion. And probably the one other benefit to prescribers that not a lot of users know about is there are other reports in the PMP besides the patient utilization report. And the big one that we like to preach is called MyRx. If you go into the web portal and you go into your account and there is a MyRx report, what that does is you pull that up and it will show you all of the controlled substances that were dispensed using your DEA number. And we recommend that prescribers pull this maybe every so often, once a month, whatever you feel, how it would work best for you. If you do find something that's wrong on the MyRx report, what we have you do is you first reach out to the pharmacy. Remember, it's the pharmacies that are uploading all the information. And maybe there was something that was wrong with the DEA number. Not all pharmacies, when they upload, it's automated, so there could be a situation like that. The pharmacists know if there is something wrong. They do have work steps in place that they can put in that would fix that for you, and then that would fix your MyRx report. If it was put in correctly, but it's not your number, then we have you reach out to the local law enforcement. They have teams that take care of this, and they'll know what to do to take care of you. So one of the changes to the law that affects not a lot of prescribers, but this is a group that we're trying to reach out to, is if you're a prescriber and you dispense controlled substances out of your office, then you have the same reporting requirements that the pharmacies do. And what I mean by that is the pharmacies, they must report daily or the next business day. And one of the other requirements too is especially if you're a prescriber who dispenses controlled substances, you might have not dispensed any that day. You still have to report a 0. And another thing too is with prescribers, they may no longer dispense Schedule II opioids. And of course, the medication-assisted treatment programs are exempt from that. If you are in the situation where you are dispensing, and I want to be, let me just kind of step back for a moment. So there's prescribing, but then there's dispensing, and then there is administering. And sometimes people get the dispensing and administering a little bit confused. And kind of the easiest way to think about it is if you prescribe a medication and your patient leaves your office with the medication in their body, you have administered it and you do not need to report that. But if they leave your office with a bottle of pills or whatever that is a controlled substance, then you must report that. So we get questions about that. I hope I've explained that a little bit. It can get a little bit confusing, but again, the clearinghouse report, the clearinghouse is what we call the program that you report. Again, it's free. You go in, you set up your account, and then you're good to go. So I want to spend a little bit of time now. We'll change gears a little bit and talk about EPCS, electronic prescribing of controlled substances, with the caveat that right now during the health emergency that was declared by the governor, the EPCS requirement actually is not in effect right now. It will go back into effect once we're through this medical emergency. But I still think it is important to know about it, to think about it, and especially some of the things that might be exempt from that requirement. So just really quickly, I'm just going to go through this. So electronic prescribing of controlled substances, it has to be an EPCS certified system that you use, and the prescriber has to have that system, as does the pharmacist. Prescribers have to complete an online, or I'm sorry, an identity credentialing program. Typically, these systems use a dual authentication, easy for me to say. That might be a fob, it might be a biometric where you press your thumb. You might get a text with with an access code. You put in your password. We all deal with these when we're dealing with our banks and that type of stuff. It's just that type of thing as well. You do not need to have an electronic health record system to use EPCS. There are some standalone EPCS systems that you can use. I know of one that I think works on a cell phone. Something to keep in mind as well is right now in the state of Arizona, once we get out of the health emergency, it only applies, EPCS transmission requirement only applies to Schedule II opioid prescriptions only. So keep that in mind. We get questions about that quite a bit. Only Schedule II opioids. If you want to go in and see some of the exemptions and clarifications and that type of stuff, this is the Arizona revised statute. You can see the number. But I want to talk about some of the exemptions because these can come into play quite a bit. The first one is if EPCS system is not operational. Again, a lot of the exemptions are put in place because we don't want patients that have a valid reason to have these medications be stopped from getting those. So there's a balance there, right? We have people that will play the system, we have people that will take advantage of the system, and we have to sort of watch them, but really we don't want to stop folks that need these medications to get them. So we realized that an EPCS system might not be operational. In that situation, the prescriber can use a hard copy. They would just have to write on the script that the EPCS system is not operational, and the pharmacist should fill that prescription. Also, we have quite a few federal facilities in the state, and they're not required to follow this EPCS because it's a state statute. So there might be a situation where you might receive a hard copy from a federal facility to dispense a prescription, and that's perfectly okay. Veterinarians are exempt right now because their software is not really up to speed with it quite yet, but they will, I don't know when, but down the road they'll have that same requirement as well. We get out-of-state prescriptions, especially when we have folks that are coming from out of state. We know that we have a part of our population that comes in when it is cooler in their part of the world. And so there might be a situation where it's an out-of-state prescription. Those can be filled as well if it's a hard copy. Long-term health care, hospice prescriptions, they can use faxes to send those in. The compound medications, the software is just not capable of yet of being able to have that information put in there. Compound medication, it's just a little bit of a different animal. So those are not required to be EPCS, sent through an EPCS system. And there might be a situation where there is a new Schedule II opioid that maybe it's not in the medication database yet, and so it might be a situation where EPCS systems haven't caught up with that yet. again, we want to make sure that the patients do not receive or do receive their medications, and so hard script can be used on this as well. So I am sort of the, I don't want to say preaching to the choir, but I'm here on behalf of Health Current, and really Health Current is the source that you want to go to if you have any EPCS questions. They have it all. They've got a great website. They've got information, they got how to do it, who does it. They just a very, very good site. We do have some information on our site as well, so you're more than welcome to go to our site. But if you had really deep, in-depth questions, we would send you on to Health Current. Okay, I want to talk a little bit now about clinical alerts. This is something that we have activated and are part of the PMP now. Again, we know that health professionals are extremely busy. You get a report from a patient and there's a lot of information on there and you're pressed for time, and sometimes things might be missed. So we have actually paid for and have activated what are called clinical alerts. And these began in April of 2020. And these are pushed to prescribers and pharmacists. And again, these are for informational purposes only. It's just one more piece of information that our health professionals have to give us the best care that they can. We have 2 clinical alerts that are active right now. The first one is if the patient has a concurrent opioid or benzo prescriptions, that is a dangerous combination, and that will be flagged in the clinical alert. The second one we have is it's called the suspected prescriber pharmacy shopper, and this is the criteria that will kick in the alert. If the patient has received controlled substance prescriptions from 5 or more prescribers, filled at 5 or more pharmacies over the past 90 days, then that will trigger an alert. Let's talk a little bit about the alerts themselves. This is what the alerts look like. So if you were to pull a patient report, you would see this on top of the patient report, and would give you information about the, again, a possible dangerous situation for the patient. So these appear on top of the patient utilization report if you were to pull one. Also, users have a dashboard, and there is a patient alert section of the dashboard, and so when any of those are triggered, the prescriber or pharmacist can go in. You can see that they can download the PDF to get more information about what's going on. And again, one more piece of information for them. They also receive emails as well to the email account that they're using in their PMP account, which is the username. So folks seem to like it. I think initially there might have been a little bit of alert fatigue, but again, it's just one more way for us to give our medical providers the best possible information that they can have. Okay, we are on the downward slope here. My voice is still going strong. I think we're going to make it through. Again, the ultimate goal of the PMP is the well-being of the patient, and it's about giving medical professionals just one, other bits of information that they can use to make the best decision possible. The PMP, the use of the PMP has made an impact, and we see that with, prescribing habits and, just prescribing and that type of stuff as well. But we know that the PMP is not a silver bullet. It's just a point of information that can be used. But I want to talk now about some additional resources that medical professionals have when regarding opioids and controlled substances. The first one I like to sing the praises to is called the OR line, Opioid Assistance and Referral Line. The OR line is housed down in Tucson. I think it's, I think if I heard somebody say that, I think it's part of poison control, but this line is staffed by medical professionals that are able to give both medical professionals and the public information about opioid prescribing, whether that's MME limits or maybe it's dangerous combinations. They'll be able to help you. It's free, of course, and probably the most important thing that they can do is the referral part, is that they can make warm referrals to whether your patient or somebody you know needs some assistance when it comes to opioid abuse disorder or any problems they might be having in that situation. They can make a warm referral to a facility that can help whomever you're helping. The second one most people know about now, but the naloxone access, it is well known that if there is a situation where there might be an opioid use disorder, if there's naloxone available and there's education around how to use naloxone, it does save lives. Dr. Christ from the Arizona Department of Health Services sent out a standing order, and basically this is a prescription that anybody who goes into a pharmacist and asks for naloxone will be able to have that filled. That is like a prescription in that regard. Another source of information that I like to sing the praises about is the Prescribing Guidelines. This came again out of Governor Ducey's Opioid Epidemic Act. A lot of different partners got together and put together this, these guidelines when it comes to prescribing opioids. It'll give you information on ways that, maybe to mitigate the use of opioids in acute pain, chronic pain. There's a list of recommendations that they give, and one of those recommendations is use the PMP. So that's why I like to make sure that people are aware of this and know that it's available. You can get a copy if you go to the Arizona Department of Health Services, ADHS website. You can download a PDF version of it, or you can order hard copies of it as well. So I'd like to make sure that we've got that. Okay, I've been talking at you a lot. It's 12:40, so I know we'll have some time for questions, but I do want to let you know that we do have a really good website that we keep up with the latest and greatest information that we have available. And not only just on PMP, but again, you can go to our site and you see that we have integration on there. We also have EPCS information on there as well. When I present, I don't really get into the nuts and bolts of using the PMP. And the reason why I do that is because we do have really good short, like 5 or 6 minute videos that will give you, train you on how to use, how to register for the PMP, how to pull a patient report, how to look at that report. It will show you how to pull that MyRx report I told you about. So if you're a prescriber and you're interested in using that, we do have short training videos on there that will help you with that as well. Plus you have contact information that you can reach out to us and we'll help you. We pride ourselves on being really good at getting back with people very quickly. So it's a good resource to have, even if you're not a pharmacist. Again, the PMP touches a lot of different folks. So for sure, go in, make this a favorite. And again, these are some of the training videos that I alluded to. Okay, Christine, do we have any questions?
We do not have any at this time in the chat box. So for those that are participating, we'll give you some time to type your questions in for Lynn so he can answer them. And again, if you're not typing in the chat box, Lynn, would you be able to bring up your contact information again in case somebody wants to email you or the Department of Pharmacy, and that way they'll have that at their fingertips as well.
Yes, it is on here. This is the important one here. But let me give you my personal email. I apologize. Sometimes I have it in my presentations and sometimes I don't. I don't think it's in this one. You can contact me. My name is Lynn Curtis, and my email address is L and then Curtis, Curtis, at azpharmacy.gov, G-O-V. So L Curtis at azpharmacy.gov.
Thanks, Lynn. I just put that in the chat for everybody that's joining us, so
Thank you.
in case they want to reach out to you that way.
Did I just see a question pop in?
I just typed your email address, but there could be
Okay.
the possibility if they sent it to you directly. Sometimes I may not be able to see that. Give everybody a few more minutes to type any questions that they have. Oh, here's a question. Wanted to know if the pharmacy board has used its teeth on prescribers not using the PMT.
We get that question a lot. Yes and no. And what I mean by that is the pharmacy board is only accountable for pharmacists. So if a prescriber is misusing the PMP or not using it enough, then that would be up to their licensing board. As I mentioned before, they do have access to the PMP, and we have had them go in and pull PMP reports. If you're a prescriber, you're probably used to getting every quarterly, there's a prescriber report, and that will tell you, how many controlled substances that were prescribed. It will also show you, how many PMP lookups you have. What's right and what's wrong, we don't know, but we leave that up to the licensing board. So I know that PMP information has been part of some discipline for pharmacists, but we don't have any teeth when it comes to prescribers. That would be up to their licensing board. And I will tell you this, there is a push right now going on for compliance, and I think you're going to see more of that coming up. I don't think you're going to see anybody with a class 6 felony, in court, but it's up to your licensing board. But I think you're going to start seeing a little bit more teeth from the licensing boards when it comes to using the PMP.
And a secondary question on that, if a pharmacist and prescribers share the same EHR or EMR on site, are the pharmacists still required to check the PDMP if the prescriber has checked it and documented any findings in the progress notes?
That, I guess letter of the law would be yes, but if it's on site and and it's documented, then I guess the easiest answer would be yes, they should. But if it's documented, that would give them a little more of a heads up of what's what. Again, pharmacists have a little bit different requirement when it comes to pulling it up the PMP, and so the prescriber might not do it, but if it's in a workflow where it is pulled up, and if it's electronically, that might be part of the PMP or the electronic file itself. Does that make sense? I'm probably butchering this. One of the challenges that we have is we don't get to see how integrated systems work. And so it might be that maybe that is part of their electronic health record, and the pharmacist would probably, if it's in the notes, I would say they would probably just, select it again and make sure that everything's correct. I'm sorry, Christine. Integrated systems are very easy to pull information about the PMP. So again, there are requirements that the pharmacist and the prescriber need to do, but I know that there's some workflow there as well that might come into play.
Okay, thank you. Could you please review the information about the federal facility exemptions to EPCS?
Sure. So there might be a situation. So again, the federal facilities, the military facilities, the Veterans Administration, health administrations, they are federal facilities, so they do not need to follow our state statute. and the state statute right now is, Schedule II opioids. So there might be a situation where a person maybe was seen. Let's say that a patient was seen at an Indian health services facility, but they want to, and they get a hard copy of their, Schedule II opioid prescription, but they want to fill it at maybe a non-facility pharmacy. That non-federal pharmacy, let's say it's a CVS, Target, they would fill that, even though it's not electronically prescribed, they would still fill that.
Thank you. Again, please type your questions into the chat box. We'd love to have these discussions with Lynn, and hopefully can answer any questions that you have during this time. Again, I did put Lynn's email address, Lynn Curtis at lcurtis@azpharmacy.gov, if you'd like to reach out to him directly with any one-on-one questions.
And these are fantastic questions, and no questions are out of bounds. I don't profess to be able to answer all of them, but I will get you an answer if you email me.
Okay, another question popped up. The mandate is for checking PMP for opioids and benzos only. Is that correct?
So that is for prescribers. That's the bare minimum requirement for the statute. But what we're seeing is that a lot of the, like I said before, a lot of the bigger health entities, the health medical associations, health professional associations are just kind of making it a best practice just to go in and do it. But that is what the statute says right now for prescribers. These are very good questions.
They certainly are. It takes a few minutes for people to type, so we'll give them another minute or two. We've got about 10 minutes left in today's presentation. So again, we enjoy the conversation. Well, I'm not seeing additional questions come through at this time. Lynn, if it's okay with you, we could give everybody 10 minutes back to their lunch hour.
That would be perfect. I just thank you so much for being with me today on this. Again, if I didn't answer a question quite the way, maybe a little bit muddled, please email me. I always get back with you, and thank you for allowing me to be here, Christine, especially Health Current. Thank you.
You are very, very welcome. And thank you again for all of our attendees, your questions and comments. We really appreciate that, and appreciate Lynn for presenting today. For everyone that has registered and participated in today's webinar, we will send a copy of the slide deck along with any Q&As that were addressed during the call. Just a reminder, the call has been recorded and will be posted to the Health Current website once it's available. Thank you again for joining us for today's webinar. Thank you to Access, the Arizona Board of Pharmacy, and the Arizona Department of Health Services for joining Health Current in supporting this webinar. Thank you to everyone today. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you for the next webinar in December. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Be safe.
Thanks, Lynn. Bye-bye.